Hi, this is Brian O'Haron. Didn't get to do a show this Wednesday for we had some conflicting problems, but they got resolved, and I'm here tonight just for this week. I'll be back on next Wednesday, usual time, with one program or the other. And then I'll also in parallel be starting this program, Some Local History. First program will be about Frank H. DeMars. And it's a business program, apolitical history. Shouldn't be controversial. As far as I can see, Frank H. DeMars is not controversial at all. Most of the news about Frank lived back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, is positive. So maybe it'll be refreshing for you to watch that program. I thought I'd tell you quickly tonight the towns that this charter, Channel 13, covers. You know, a lot of the local programs now, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, etc., they've been switched to Channel 15. So if you turn on one night and you think you're going to see them on Channel 13, just flip over to Channel 15, and most likely they'll be on where they used to be in the same time frames. Got to be a little careful because they do have special meetings too at times, and those aren't always announced. So you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to check over there once in a while and see if there is a meeting. Usually the meeting starts at 6 or 7. So if they're not on at those times, then they're probably not on that night. But on the regular meetings, they usually start on time, and they'll be on Channel 15 for you to watch them there. I have had calls asking me if I was going to be on the certain night, because people didn't realize that things were on Channel 15 now rather than 13. So I'm just reminding you. Now, what towns do we cover here? Channel 15, 13 and 15 cover Colebrook, Winsted, Barkhamsted, Harwinton, New Hartford, and West Hartland. So if you're in those areas, you should be able to see this program. I'll be showing some local history, I hope, on the Torrington coverage area as well, because DeMars did a lot of work down in that area as well as around the vicinity of Winsted and Winchester. So it's going to be kind of interesting. I do know people that are in Harwinton, certain parts of Harwinton, and they either don't get Channel 13 or 15, or their particular part of that area is not covered. I don't know all the details on that. Anyway, tonight you're going to see first a picture of the charter, because a lot of things we talk about have implications, charter type implications, especially tonight. Then you'll see a picture of Selectman Fracasso, who was mayor during the last administration and is a selectman in the minority in this administration. And they usually say if you're in the minority, that's pretty tough. Tough being in the minority on our Board of Selectmen. But Selectman Fracasso is not a bashful man. He's a very successful businessman. He's a local resident since birth, grown up here, knows everybody, very active in the community, personally helping people from time to time with all kinds of things, from shoveling off their roof to helping them with all kinds of friendly gestures that take his time and energy, but he does seem to enjoy it. So you're lucky to have him here. Again, he is a local resident. He's not an import. He knows a lot about the town and its history, graduated from the schools here, and he's kind of a rarity. On this particular Board of Selectmen, there are a couple who grew up in Winsted, 2 or 3, I think, and the rest are from out of town. And they've lived here for a while, most of them, but Their roots are elsewhere, like mine. My roots are in Torrington. When I was growing up till about 17 or so, and then I went around the world and came back when I was about 60 or so. So anyway, we're going to be talking tonight about a controversy that started in the last administration and seems to be still simmering, if not boiling. And that's the whole controversy about George Clausen, who sued the town in the last administration because he was removed by the selectmen. I think the vote was 5-2, but I can't remember exactly. Went through the whole process of public hearing and defending himself, and then sued the town. Cost the town about $45,000, give or take a little bit. And I imagine it probably cost him some money if they were for quite a while taking up a collection for him. But it's hard to collect money in Winsted, particularly at Highland Lake, for some reason. A lot of people live up there, are on the edge, especially since the crash. But anyway, they were asking for money. Started out asking for $1,000 a person. That didn't last too long. And I don't know how it ended up. Don't know how much he got, if anything. But he had an attorney, and he put up a strong defense. Although there were some interesting decisions along the way, it was never a final solution because the minority that is now in the majority now used a lot of sort of Naderish tactics. Put up a strong defense, yelling and screaming at meetings, jumping up and down, calling people names, all that kind of thing. And by some reasoning, unbeknownst to me, they got the sympathy of the community behind George Clausen. He said he wouldn't run for selectman because he was a P&Z guy. Or at least he was quoted in the paper as having said that. But he did run in the end for selectman, and he won. Got a lot of votes. He's now co-chair of the Democratic Town Committee with his close associate, Mayor Perez. She's the other co-chair. The Democratic Town Committee, of course, is kind of split now between the people who took over their party for the last election, mainly conservation extremists from the Highland Lake District, and the long-standing Democrats that have been in the party for years and years and years. A lot of them way back. FDR was their hero, as he was for many people in those days. But anyway, George Clausen got elected, was in the majority, so a vote was passed to forgive the charges. They passed an innocuous motion to make sure that people can't be removed from commissions in the future without certain due process, which was already in the charter anyway, so it's kind of a nothing thing, but they did it. And now George Clausen is a selectman. And in last week's Board of Selectmen meeting, the controversy surrounding George Clausen poked its head up again for a second time. Since becoming a selectman, George Clausen was appointed by the majority. The liaison to planning and zoning, along with Kenneth Fracasso. So we have two liaisons there, best of my knowledge, George Clausen and Mayor Fracasso. Now, Selectman Fracasso. Perhaps again, next time Mayor Fracasso, we don't know, we'll find out. So, Clausen is liaison to planning and zoning with Selectman Fracasso. He's co-chairman of the Democratic Town Committee. By the way, I often refer to Selectman Fracasso as Mayor Fracasso because I still think he's the mayor. He does a lot more on this Board of Selectmen than the mayor does. And I've always thought that the mayor was kind of a ceremonial title because you have to get the most votes and you have to be appointed mayor. But otherwise, the mayor has the same duties as the rest of the selectmen, as a select person and on the Board of Finance. But the mayor does get to be at the head of the parades and say a few words at some of the ceremonial occasions, and that kind of differentiates the mayor from the rest of the selectmen. Proclamations, things like that. So, in addition to being liaison to planning and zoning, he's co-chairman of the Democratic Town Committee. He's now chairman of the POCD Planning Committee, which is a committee put together from people on various commissions, small number of people, to try to, over many years, implement some of the guidelines that are in the POCD document. Now, I do want to emphasize to you, there's a lot of confusion about the POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development. The Plan of Conservation and Development is a guideline. It's not a law. The regulations that will evolve, any changes to the regulations that will evolve from this planning committee over time and have to be approved at public hearings, which most people don't pay attention to and don't go to until they get stung by their results. They will be the law, but they have to also conform with state, federal statutes, and especially state statutes. So there's law there that has to be followed once these regulations are approved after the public hearings. He's a Democratic selectman, of course, now that he's been elected. And his wife, Susan, is on the Planning and Zoning Commission as well. At the last selectman meeting, Selectman Fracasso, during the new business portion of the meeting, which is usually at the end of the meeting, or close to the end of the meeting, it could be in the middle if there's a lot of, not much new business, but a lot of, not much old business, but a lot of new business. Selectman Fracasso contended at the last Board of Selectmen meeting that Clausen may have a conflict of interest regarding the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert on the charter or the state statutes or the ordinances or the regulations. So I'm kind of reporting here what happened. And of course, in the end, it will be up to the probably the town attorney to pass judgment in this area. But Selectman Fracasso contended at the last Board of Select meeting that Clausen may have a conflict of interest regarding the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, I can't go into it all here on this program, nor do I want to, but when you are involved with a commission, like, say, Planning and Zoning, as a liaison or any other member, there are certain laws and rules that apply to speaking at these meetings. Most anybody can say anything during a public hearing. Before and after public hearings, it's kind of touchy, and certain people aren't allowed to say things, especially after the public hearing has been closed. If you say too much before a public hearing, it might show bias, which is not good. If you say too much afterwards, it may be against the rules. So this is a tricky area, which I'm not an expert on. But this discussion that was started last week is to be continued at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, which I believe is on Monday. I hope I'm right. The 4th of April, 7 o'clock, Channel 15. Or if you want to attend in person, you can go to the P. Francis Hicks Room in Town Hall, 7 p.m. And at the next meeting, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission will be there for the continuation of this discussion brought up by Selectman Fracasso during the new business section of the last meeting. Selectman Fracasso was reported in the papers as saying that he was concerned that in going through the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, he doesn't attend all the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, although he's a liaison. He's kind of hands-off there. But in going through the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission, he was concerned about the amount of input that George Clausen had put in during the meetings. You are not a member of the commission, said Fracasso, but in almost every application, you are making comments. I know that you are a liaison, but there are at least a dozen or more things that you have commented on. I just wonder, said Selectman Fracasso, if this is a conflict of interest. He raised that question. Clausen responded, as reported in the newspaper, I don't interject anything, said Clausen. Fracasso responded, as reported in the paper, I beg to differ, Fracasso insisted. A very embarrassed mayor, a staunch Clausen supporter, at least until the last letter he wrote criticizing one of her decisions on the selectmen, and co-chairman of the Democratic Town Committee, Mayor Perez, interrupted and said that this requires additional discussion and more fact-finding. There are rumors all over town that if they run again and win, both Clausen and Mayor Perez would like to be mayor. That's interesting. But on this particular case, she interrupted And she wanted to make sure that it didn't get out of hand. And that this requires additional discussion and more fact-finding. I do want to say that last time, when the mayor was in the minority, she was happy to see this kind of discussion and participated in a lot herself. But now that she's mayor, she does attend every meeting, I notice. Doesn't miss 13 like she did last time. And she dresses pretty well, and she comes on time. But she does talk an awful lot. And most good chairmen don't speak much at all. I've seen excellent chairmen that hardly ever said a word. They were more interested in the coordination of the meeting and moving things along. But anyway, she jumped in pretty quick, pretty embarrassed, and she put a halt to the discussion and suggested they put it on the agenda at the next meeting, which is Monday night. Fracasso said that he is concerned about the number of subcommittees under the Planning and Zoning Commission. Remember now, we're committee, subcommittee, committee, subcommittee, committee, subcommittee, commission, subcommittee, commission, committee kind of town, as in most government throughout America. Committees are managed by commissions, and the committees have subcommittees. So there's a lot of layers, and there's a lot of people on some of these commissions and committees, 10, 11, 12, up to 16 on one. Some are smaller. And the smaller ones, I think, like the Water and Sewer Commission, which I think is 5, maybe 6, tend to work best. People stay longer on those commissions. They have the right background, and they enjoy their work, and they look out for the best interests of the town. Sometimes on certain commissions, it might not be exactly that way. Fracasso said, we appoint 5 sitting members of the commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, selectmen appoint them, and 3 alternates. The selectmen also appoint all their replacements, should somebody step down. Fracasso said, I don't understand why the members of the commission can't do all of this themselves. I'm a strong believer in that as well. When I'm on a commission, I participate to the fullest extent possible, and I don't get on a commission unless I have the time to do so. When I was working most of my life traveling the world, I had no time for commissions. But now I have plenty of time for commissions, and I seldom miss a meeting, and I usually do my homework, and I come prepared. And I don't expect that from everybody, because I do know that they have jobs, they have families, they have a lot of activities, younger children, that kind of thing. And it's kind of hard for them to make it to every meeting and to prepare for every meeting. So not all can be expected. There have to be some people, of course, who can do it. Otherwise, it takes forever. It takes forever in a commission committee approach anyway, because they're designed to slow the whole process down. But you meet once a month or something like that. I mean, it's not a speedy process. I just attended a couple courses down in New Britain the other night, where they talked, it was actually one course, but they talked about 2 subjects, planning and zoning and economic development commission. And a lot of the talk was about how can we speed up the process in Connecticut to get decisions made faster. Can we make it simpler for people to establish businesses in our state, cities, and towns? because the competition around America is great now. There are more people courting businesses than there are businesses courting new towns and cities. So we have to be very, very competitive. So anyway, that's what our commissions and all are supposed to be doing. But then Fracastle said, if you can't attend the next meeting, actually Fracastle didn't say that, Brian said that, if you can't attend the next meeting, tune in on Channel 15 and watch the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday, April 4th at 7 p.m. if things go according to plan. Or read the account in the newspapers the next day and form your own opinion. There is a new POCD. It has been approved, and it's going through the last stages at a public hearing and been approved, and it's going through whatever happens next with the state now. In my opinion, and I've expressed this publicly in all public meetings, it is packed with extreme conservation and not enough development. Part of that is because most of the people that were on the Conservation Committee, or the POCD, called it the POCD Committee. I personally call it the POCD Conservation Committee because that's what their main focus and interest was. I did attend some of the meetings and gave my feedback, which was promptly dismissed. And as a result, it's my opinion that they produced a lopsided POCD. Lopsided, too much conservation, not enough development. But on the other hand, if the POC is there, it's a guideline. We all have to go by it, and we will. Since joining the Economic Development Commission, I have written a paper to the commission members suggesting, with help from other people in the community, suggesting help, an approach to strengthen the EDC portion of the POCD. And when we went to the public hearings, they did say that they didn't want to stop now when they were trying to get it approved, but they would consider changes to the POCD in the EDC area in the future. So the EDC is going to work with planning and zoning and try to balance this by make sure the regulations are balanced, etc. It is a guideline. It won't become law until it gets into the regulations. But the intent is to pay attention to the POCD and not do anything that violently conflicts with it without going through some sort of a process, land use boards and the government of the town to have the regulations changed. So there'll be a lot of work going on over the next few years on these regulations. Pay attention to it. Go to the meetings. I know you won't, but I'm asking you to anyway. And give your 2 cents. And normally what you get at these meetings are the extremists, either left or right. Most of the people in the center, they don't pay any attention at all. When I'm trying to do organize people at Highland Lake for one thing or another, most people say to me, Brian, we're here to enjoy the lake. We're already deep in our hometowns into various administrative town things and all concerns. So we're here to get away from all that, enjoy the lake, and we really don't want to get involved. But when the taxes come out, they're the first ones to ask why the taxes are so high. And what is the town doing about it? Sometimes when I ask them, they say they don't even vote. They don't have, they're not registered voters. So they can't do anything about it if they wanted to on certain issues. And wherever I can, if they are able to vote, I try to get them to fill out an absentee ballot, walk them through that process. Because most people aren't aware of any of the processes in the town, and that makes everything more difficult. Well, anyway, now that Selectman has been appointed liaison to the Planning and Zoning Commission, along with Selectman Fracasso, the issue is beginning to rear its head again. Fracasso is an arm's length liaison, and in my opinion, and that of others, George Clausen is hands-on and with sticky fingers. He likes to get in there, as far as I can see, and be very personally involved with their workings. And don't forget, he did say that he's a planning person when he said he wasn't going to run for selectman. And I believe it. He is interested in planning. He has his own views. Not everybody agrees with those views. But he's smart enough to know that you can get a lot done in town government because people aren't paying attention. So we have to kind of be the town criers here and say, pay attention. Kind of watch what's going on, because you pay the taxes. And it's your town. The taxpayers are the owners of the town. All this may not be illegal or unethical, but it smells kind of foul at best. And if I were a selectman, I would not walk such a narrow line. I wouldn't sue the town either for such a trivial matter, relatively speaking. I think, like Selectman Fracasso, George should probably resign from one or the other of the positions and either be on planning and zoning, where he probably would end up as chairman, because he does have vast knowledge of planning and zoning regulations, etc. Or he should be a selectman, which he said in the past he wasn't. He was a planning and zoning man, but not both. The town is in pretty bad condition now, financially, and we need either plenty of cost cutting. This is now being attempted in the school system, which is 65% of our budget, or more additional recurring profitable tax revenue. This will all take a great deal of time at best, and is not an easy problem to solve, especially in this brownfield part of our town. So, it's going to take a great deal of time at best. So hold on to your seat belts. Last week, a special selectmen meeting was held to discuss sending a contingent of available selectmen to Hartford to talk with the interim commissioner of education to discuss matters regarding the budgetary and minimum budget requirements. You see a picture on the screen of the latest budget submission from last night to the selectmen from the Board of Education. Room was packed. I sat through it Fell asleep a couple times because it was past my bedtime, but otherwise I got the gist of it. There are a lot of people from Gilbert, a lot of people from the Board of Education trying to defend their 6.2% increase in the budget for 2011-2012, which starts, I guess, July 1st. Despite having taken a step, gigantic step, moving 7th and 8th grade up to Gilbert, where they should have been saving a couple $1 million. Now, like anything else, they're not going to save a couple $1 million. They want $1.2 million more than they had last year, which was from the town, $19,043,000. So they didn't cut. They went up. And the reason for that is the K through 6 portion of the new budget has asked for what I would consider to be a lot of makeup for lost time type things. More janitors, more this, more that. That all adds up to roughly 1.2 million. Now, this is going to be interesting because, number one, I don't think they're going to get that. The next step is for the selectmen to review it and make adjustments to their bottom line. So they might cut it back by 1.2 million to make it equal to last year. Or they may just cut 100,000 out of it or run it by the voters who will probably turn it down. And the reason they'll probably turn it down is because that's just one chapter of the story. The next chapter is the Board of Selectmen also want to try to have a bond issue for about $2 million as Winstead's part of a $12 million capital budget, mainly for roads, bridges, and things that have been neglected for many years for one reason or another. Some people like to blame that on the Taxpayers Association. I don't particularly, because I think they've been pretty good at helping to balance the requests that come from the Board of Selectmen. It's about an average of 4% over the last 10 or 12 years, maybe a little less now because the last years have been rough, but that's pretty comparable to other cities and towns. It appears to be a little less, but that's because we don't have a paid fire department, garbage pickup, and other kinds of things that other towns have that boost their average up a little higher. Also, most of ours is paid for by the taxpayers, residential taxpayers, and not by the businesses that are taxed in our town. So it makes it a little tough on the residential homeowners and the businesses because we're always playing catch up here. We're way behind, certainly since the flood. There were years in the 1980s when we asked for 17%, 16%. Pretty high numbers. But anyway, they had the meeting. The 3 Republicans showed up for the meeting and 1 Democrat. The other 3 Democrats, 2 of them didn't show and 1 turned up late and didn't want to vote because she hadn't heard all the background. That was the mayor. She did say she was going to be late. Personally, I would have held up the meeting until she got there, but they didn't do that. George Clausen was chairing a planning and zoning, POCD, implementation meeting at the time. That's why it's a little sensitive here on the Clausen issue, because in Picasso's eyes, and mine too, probably should have been in this meeting talking about the budget, which is much more important to us now and much more critical to the town. But anyway, they had a motion. They wanted to send a contingent of available selectmen to Hartford to talk with the interim commissioner. They wanted to do it quick before last night's budget meeting with the Board of Education. So they wanted to send them to Hartford to talk with the interim commissioner of education to discuss matters regarding budgetary and minimum budget requirements and what we anticipate we can expect from the state, and take possible action as a result of that meeting. Well, we haven't seen any action yet, because that'll happen over the next few weeks in the selectmen meetings to come. You can probably see some of them on Channel 15. Keep an eye on the paper for their times and days. And you can attend in person if you want to. I'm not so sure that they'll be accepting any feedback from the audience, except in the meetings where they have public comment. Anyway, that happened. And then we're moving. Renzullo and Clausen didn't attend at all. The mayor came in late, 10 minutes late, but since she hadn't heard all of the testimony, she didn't vote. That's not good. Budget is our main concern right now. People should have meetings, attend the meetings, and vote. The vote was 4-0 to go to Hartford and ask the questions about the education money possibly coming to the town this year in preparation for the BOE Selectmen budget meeting that was held last night. It was held last night. It was a long discussion, a lot of questions asked by Selectman Fracasso, especially some by the mayor. A lot of posturing, a lot of salesmanship by the school. Not very convincingly. Some sign that the schools are working a little better together, Gilbert and K through 8 now, K through 6 in the future. But I don't think anybody's fooled by that. The proof of the pudding will come out when the selectmen cut their budget and they have to have their first joint, or maybe not first, but their next joint budget finance committee meeting between the schools, and they have to share the responsibility for the cuts. That's going to be interesting. I'm going to go to those if I know when they're held and I'm in town. Now I'm going to show a picture. We're going to turn to a little more positive news now. A picture of a Torrington apartment building. Maybe you'll see that there. This is, you've probably been reading it in the papers, but this is a group of businessmen down in Torrington. You know, Torrington's been trying to redo their city now ever since the flood, just much like we have. And they have the brownfield problem as well. And they got a lot of empty buildings down in the center of town. They're not really all empty, but a lot of them are. But they're old, and it's not a bustling, booming town. It has a lot of good features to it. It's got the Warner Theater and all that complex. It's got a hotel and some good restaurants down there. But they keep trying to improve the whole situation, make it more center activity down there. They keep trying to do their best, just like we do here in Winsted. But these downtown partners in Torrington are moving ahead very rapidly. They have recently completed a lease for a Subway in Torrington at the southern end of the Howard's Block on Main Street, for those of you who know Torrington. A sports bar is interested in the former Memories Place at the north end of the block. And these partners, which is private industry, they're doing it with their own money and with grants they can achieve. and donations they can achieve. They're considering demolishing an apartment building that they own that you see there on Maiden Lane and making a parking lot there so people can park and walk to the stores, shops, and restaurants and theater. So they're looking at that. There's no final decision been made. Plenty of work to be done in the consideration of this. And they're going to check, they volunteered to check with the Torrington Historical Society before making any final plans, because they're trying to get along with everybody. Now, one of the interesting things they did there was they asked people in town in Torrington who would like to join our group, contribute $100 and be a member. That was mainly for esprit de corps, to get as many people as possible with skin in the game, so to speak. We say that in business, skin in the game. Even though they all have something to win, they don't have much to lose. $100 isn't going to hurt them. But they're taking all these people that signed up, and even the mayor, I'm pretty sure, signed up, Mayor Bingham, and he is a member of this group with his $100, as is Joe the baker and Pete the barber and, you know, everybody else. That gave $100. And one of the first things they did was, of course, they keep aware of what's going on, but they were chosen to pick the colors for the new awnings that are going to go up down in the center of Torrington. And part of that is coming from facade grant type money. But they're including these people in some of their decision making, these people that invested the $100. Now, of course, the majority of the money came from the partners themselves, as I understand it. And I speak highly about this kind of thing because things happen faster when businessmen invest money. And they won't invest money unless they have confidence that they're going to do good for themselves as well as the town. That's how the capitalistic system is structured. And once they do invest their money, they're going to go ahead and try to make things work. Doesn't mean they'll always succeed. Some go broke along the way. And the doubting Thomases will always be quick to point out to you all the reasons they're going to go broke. But positive people like myself say, hey, how can we get in there, try to help them? How can everybody help make them a success? Because if they are a success, it'll help everybody. If Torrington is successful in their center, it'll help Winsted. If Winsted is successful in what we're trying to do up here with the EDC and all the other commissions, well, it'll help Torrington. Help everybody. So I'm very positive about it. Now, the other thing I want to say here is that we can do that here. We can get people so excited that they'll want to invest money here. And they can invest money in all kinds of things. There are people investing money to try to get a tort museum into the town. There are people investing money to try to get a Wall of America into town. Whiting Mills some people have invested in that old building, and they have all kinds of different arts and crafts and exciting things in their building. I guess it's getting pretty much filled up now with a lot of interesting small businesses and things like that in there. Very, very nice place, very clean, very exciting to go to. They also have some public functions there, one of which I'm going to be helping them to promote, not them, but some of the people in there to promote over the next few weeks with my first historical program about Frank H. DeMars. They're going to have an exhibit of his paintings, of his photographs there, because they've recently been unearthed and are put on the internet. So there's plenty around here where people are investing in the future of the town, but there's plenty more needed. There's a long way to go. And it's very positive. So keep an eye on these downtown partners. Try to copy what they're doing. And let's hope they succeed. There's no guarantee they will succeed. It's tough. They've taken on a tough, hard challenge. Dealing with brownfields, I went to a meeting the other day where people came in from the state and other consultants, and they explained this whole brownfield situation. It's expensive. You know, everybody when I was a kid, they wanted to go to Harvard or Yale. That's where they wanted to go to. Until they found out how much it cost to go there. And how hard it was to get accepted there. Unless your father was a graduate or something like that. And then they said, okay, well, you know, we can't really afford to go there. So we'll go to Kansas, or we'll go to Yukon, or we'll go to New Britain State Teachers College at the time, or we'll go to a community college. And in the long run, they all did fairly well from getting the education that they could afford at the time. Some of the schools, the town, we've got Chester, and thank you exactly. The Frenchman in Zulu, I think, is putting together a sign, you know, trying to raise funds to be able to put those up. So one or the other. So one of them's a shorter term thing, and the other's a longer term thing. So there are things happening there, and they could be very positive for us. So I want to show you now a picture of Mayor Bingham. Because Mayor Bingham down in Torrington, this is a kid now, compared to me anyway. Yeah, what is he, maybe 27 or 8 years old? Maybe not that. I know the mayor. I talked to him a lot when I was studying the town of Torrington when we were trying to get a mayoral form of government up here in Winston, which I still think we'd be better off with, but voters didn't agree. So they're going to have to keep chunking. Mayor Bingham has called for austerity in the budget they're preparing down there in Torrington. He called for austerity when planning the budget submission. He told everybody, don't expect much. Let's tighten up. They even formed a committee down there to look for possibilities on how they could save money by cutting 1,000 here, 1,000 there, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. The committee came up with all kinds, I don't remember the name of the committee now, but they come up with all kinds of recommendations to the mayor and to the management. They have councilmen down there, not selectmen, but different form of government. But this Mayor Bingham, he knows that times are hard and that taxpayers are concerned. And he was elected by those taxpayers. So he has to listen to them. Sometimes he doesn't always agree with them. Most often, he will do what they think needs to be done. They don't have the same process for agreeing a budget that we have in Winston. They don't have a town budget meeting and a town budget referendum. In Torrington, if the taxpayers don't like it, they have to raise a petition, follow their charter to contest the budget. We have a town meeting where people can add to the budget but not subtract, can subtract from it but can't add to it. And then we have a referendum to vote on it. As you know, in the last administration, 1 year, we had six of them in 1 year. And they take a lot of time because you have to allow so many months for each thing and blah, blah, blah. So you end up running half the year on the old budget that you had the year before, which in some cases is good because that's austerity in rough times, tough times. So I give credit to Mayor Bingham. I think we need austerity too, But I'm not, as you know, I'm more interested in revenue. I think we can do a lot on the school side, 65% of our budget, to streamline it and make it more efficient. Not everybody agrees with me on that, but I'm sure we can. A lot of people do agree with me on that. So that they're still looking at that. But they made an attempt at austerity on the school side, asking for 1.2 million more. So that wasn't a very good attempt. Now it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Now, I also want to point out there's still concern about this additional $50,000 of state land trust money fit from it. There are also rumors of a large 60,000 K or so tax break, maybe true or false, that may be received by an ardent supporter of the sale through the land trust. Although this may be legal, I feel that one should declare a personal interest when advocating politically. It's only fair. So with that, in this season, it's going to be a long 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months to get this budget approved. I'm going to put up the dollar signs now. We'll end the program with all the disclaimers. And I wish you an interesting budget year.